Seattle House Mafia.
Welcome back to another episode of Industry Interviews in the Seattle House Mafia studio. Our guest today, from 97 to 2008, produced music as Jacob London with Britt Hansen and had a string of vinyl releases and remixes on Derek Carter's classic label, Viva Recordings, Ohm Records, and many other notable labels when I looked them up. And I think I actually have quite a few actually on my shelf, funny enough. And then in 2008, he transitioned and his first solo record was picked up by Free Range, which then kicked off 10 plus years of touring the world, DJing and making music. His Beatport inventory has nearly 600 tracks to date, including remixes and originals, and then tracks that have been remixed of his. So we want to welcome Dave Pezzner.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, a.k.a. Pezzner, right?
A.k.a. Pezzner. My last name.
That's right. That's right. Thanks for coming in, man.
Thanks. Yeah, Jamie O'Dell, Jempster,
right,
was when I released my first record as Pezzner. Before that, I didn't really have a name, and he's like, "So, what's your artist name?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And I'm like, spending a couple days like trying out different ideas, and then he hits me up. He's like, "How about Pezzner?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's do that.
It's good, though.
Let's do it." Yeah, sure. Okay.
Can I tell you why I think why I enjoy it?
Yeah.
Pezzner, because I grew up in the era of Pez.
Right.
This is just coming to me now. And like the Cherry Pez and the Stand By. Do you ever see Stand By Me where the kids are talking about if you could only eat one food for the rest of your life? And the one little chubby kid, Vern, says, "Cherry Pez," So anyway, I always associated Pezzner with Pez, which always gave me a good feeling and made me smile inside.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that does that for you.
But I think it's good.
Yeah, no, it was a nickname when I was a kid, Pez.
Was it really?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. And I mean, just in general, when you sent me, because a lot of times I ask people to send me some kind of data points for the intro and things like that. I started looking through your list of accomplishments. I mean, first of all, you've been producing music longer. I always feel like an old guy because I've been DJing since 97 in some capacity or another. And you've been producing music longer than that, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I started DJing in 97 too. Okay. Britt and I, we're like junior high friends.
Okay.
And we were like just trying to make rave music in high school, like in our 11th grade year, 12th grade year. And yeah, so like when we graduated, we moved on to like trying to make records and all this stuff. And then around 97 is when we had someone, a friend of ours, like kind of give us the lowdown. It's like, well, if you really want to make like kind of get by in this, you need to be DJing. And we're like, okay. And so that's when we started.
Really? So
yeah.
Unlike a lot of the guests that have come in here who kind of started DJing, then transitioned into production. I mean, I guess it's been about 50-50, but the DJing thing was the necessary evil to progress sort of in the scene, right?
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I learned a ton from from like becoming a DJ. I mean, our music sounded very different before we started DJing, and we, little did we know that we were trying to make music for DJs, but we didn't understand what DJing was all about or how to do it or any of that stuff. And so, going through the trials of learning how to play vinyl, and
which is a pain in the ass at first. It was for me, not for some, apparently.
It took me so long to learn how to beat match.
You make me feel I want to give you a hug. Because
it took me like, I don't know, 4 months of fail every day. And I had the tables in my house.
Me too.
Yeah.
I went through the same thing, and I talked to somebody who's like, oh, I picked it up after a few weeks. It's like, huh.
No, yeah. Britt picked it up right away. Fucking Brit.
I know. Well, I think I was talking to somebody. It was Terry Jacinto we were talking about, and I had to sort of relearn how to listen to music when I started trying to DJ, because I saw it as this big sort of thing, as it's its own thing, and then pulling out the 1 and the 2 to be able to beat match. It kind of took some of the magic away initially, and then I had to relearn how. And I would imagine production even more so. If that did you go through sort of a reappreciating music once you started producing?
Yeah. I mean, yes, a bit. Yeah. Because I mean, everything that we were producing was sampled, and we had an Ensoniq ASR 10 that we used to do everything on. It was our workstation. For the longest time, it was the only piece of gear we had, and so we would sample, like, we would find disco songs. My love for disco kind of came from learning, from like exploring 80s music and sampling, and prior to all of that, I just thought it was like, we were in the 90s, so I thought it was just like pop music,
right,
or something, like disco in the 80s. I thought it was kind of cheesy. I didn't love disco when I was younger, but through sampling and through understanding and seeing people dance to it and, exploring all this music, that's when I started, and my ear just got so tuned to finding things that were, finding awesome music.
Yeah. So I want to go back to that in a second, but I was kind of going back in history, thinking about when I first saw Jacob London play. So Jacob London, the origin of Jacob London was you and Britt Hansen, friends since junior high. Mm-hmm. When did you guys actually like come together with your Wonder Twins handshake and say, we're going to make music and kill this thing?
This was early on. So like we were in basically 11th grade. Okay. And
locally here in Seattle?
Here, Redmond.
Okay.
We both went to Redmond High, and we, I had a job, like an after school job, right across the street from Britt's house. And so our routine was we would come down to Britt's place after school, and Britt had a Roland Alpha Juno 1 keyboard. Okay. And it was like a synthesizer.
Yep.
And she had a couple like little Korg drum machines, and a couple different tape recorders. And so we wanted to be in a band so bad. Like we wanted to be in an industrial band. And at the same time, all the cool kids in school were like in grunge bands, and
right.
They were playing out and stuff. They were crushing it. And like,
this is early 90s.
Yeah, like 92,
Okay.
But we wanted to be different. We wanted to be an industrial band, and Britt had the gear for it. And so like I'd go over to Britt's place, and like we would just like, come up with stuff. We'd record it as quickly as we could, and it sounded pretty good. Like we would record the drums and keyboard onto one tape, and then we'd take the recording that was on that tape, and then we would like play along with it onto another tape, and then we would just go back and forth tape to tape until it sounded like really, really bad, because we didn't have like a mixer or anything.
Okay.
We didn't understand like syncing it up with MIDI. Like it was like that was all beyond. And so and then we had like Radio Shack microphone, the little like rattly, like the little tiny one.
Just one mic?
Yeah, we just had the one mic. We just had the one mic. And at one point Britt got the Radio Shack reverb, which I don't know if you know about this device. It's really, at this point, it's probably the best reverb. It sounds like a digital spring. It's just like so nasty. But we use that, and I would take these tape recordings, over to Taco Time, which is where I worked across the street.
Gotcha.
And I'd play it for our friends, and like it was all the other kids were in high school, and they'd hear this and be like, "That's awesome!"
Oh, so they were supportive.
I was getting support.
Nice.
Yeah, it was like rad, and I'd come back and tell Britt how much everybody loved the music, and then we'd do it again every day. We'd just make new tunes. We made so many tunes like after school.
Wow.
And by our senior year, we were like, going to Guitar Center, and Britt's mom would like rent us a drum machine, for like a week, and I'd basically spend like all of spring break with Britt, like just cracking out on a drum machine and like recording as much as we could. And then for our senior year, I think a big gift for Britt was renting an EPS 16 Plus, which was a full-on sampler workstation, and we recorded a whole bunch of stuff, and like we didn't leave like the bedroom recording stuff. We're just nonstop, right? And by the time we graduated, we borrowed some money from a friend and bought an ASR 10.
Okay.
And we were just like, we made a pact, like a legit, like, like the kind you would see in like, I don't know, like an old 80s movie or something.
Right.
We're making a pact to make music forever. And it's been that way ever since.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so when did the name Jacob London, is there a story behind Jacob London when you guys started going by that?
So for,
and I don't want to skip a bunch if there's
no. I think the rest is history, really. So when we did music as Vitus Dance for like all before Jacob London, and actually we were starting to get gigs. We were playing at like Lish House, and we played at the Monroe Fairgrounds at this big rave on New Year's. Like we were getting gigs,
and
right?
this was like a live keyboard mic.
Everything was live. Yeah.
Wow.
Before we started DJing, we'd bring the ASR 10 out, and like we'd come up with our sets and everything. But then when we started releasing music, after we started DJing and around like 96, we got a record deal through was it Eat House? It was Eat Static Eat House. It was remember that store Delicious Music? Yep. Yeah, Carlos's. Yep. It was his store. He had this label, and he put out our first record. And we at the time the label was being funded through a bigger company called Will Records. It was like a record company that kind of around the corner, and the record deal that they issued us was like really invasive. Like they wanted to own our name, they wanted to own everything, and we're like, well, we're excited about releasing this record, but we're not going to lose Vitus Dance. So
Vitus Dance.
Yeah, totally. We're like, no, Vitus Dance is like, we've done so much. And so we released, Britt had the idea to use the name of this music attorney that has been putting his name in the back of The Stranger, and he had this ads, and his name is Jacob London. And so we were like, we're Jacob London. And so we released that record as Jacob London, and then it did really, really well. And then we were like, well, Will Records went out of business, and we're like, well, now we're Jacob London.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And
So-
the Jacob London attorney, who was a music attorney, never came after you for
No.
using his likeness.
No. Actually, I know the guy now.
I was going to say you should buy him a drink.
I've worked with him. I've hired him for entertainment law, and totally we're cool.
That's it's so meta.
Yeah, right. When I first reached out to you, this was the free range deal, right? So when I first got the free range deal, their record deal was also like kind of big, but in the contract it says, we recommend that you reach out to an attorney to like look this over. And I was like, okay, well, I know a guy. And so I reached out to Jacob London, and his response was like, well, how can Jacob London say no to Jacob London? And
Paul might have to cut this out. I'm crying a little bit. Sorry. That's amazing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So,
I had no idea.
Yeah, and we've reached out. I've connected him with the Can, and Christina's used him for some like copyright law. He's a copyright lawyer.
That's so
He's
fucking
like
cool.
very, very knowledgeable lawyer. He's great.
Did he get a kick out of the whole like you stole his name? And
I mean, we didn't really talk too much about it, but I'm sure he did. I mean, how could you not, right?
No, that's amazing. Well, it's funny. And then I was trying to think of the first time, because I think the first time I saw you and Britt DJ, and I have a pretty good memory because I never got into like the dark side, right? So I was usually pretty sober when I was out, and it was either the Contour. No, you know what okay, so there's three options I came up with. It was this, you remember the Super Weird Club that was super weird in my opinion, that was across the street from Platinum Records, and they would open and then they would close again.
Ego.
Yes.
Ego.
And then they'd open again and then they'd close again.
That place was like cursed, but it was a cool spot.
Totally.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think I may have met you there at some point. I went in with Carlos Mendoza, funny enough, and he brought me in, and we like DJ'd there one night when nobody was there, and you know.
Yeah. I feel like that might have been like our Squid Records record release party.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so. I think that's the first time I met you too, because I was going back, and then because I remembered I actually played with or on the same bill one night at the Contour, some sketchy after hours at the Contour.
Right.
And then the other one that really got me, and I wonder if you remember this, it was kind of awesome and kind of offensive, the whole naked sushi thing. Right?
Yes, I remember that.
Can you, just for the listeners, can you tell us a little bit about that night, naked sushi? Because that caused quite and if you don't want,
it was acceptable in the at the time,
right?
as Calvin Harris would say.
Exactly.
Right? It was acceptable at the time. So it's very not Me Too friendly, like I
totally.
mean, like it was, they would lay a woman out onto, like a woman would lay down on the table fully undressed, and they put sushi out and they just basically use her as a platter.
Right. It sounds horrible when you say it out loud, but it was pretty awesome at the time. Right?
I feel so bad about that. I feel bad being involved in any of it, to be honest.
Is that right?
Yeah, I'm just going to look at the camera and say, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
But it was wild. Like they would bring in like great house DJs. Like the music was great. The vibe was cool, and the sushi was good. You just happened to be eating it off a naked girl, right?
And yes, people were generally like really respectful.
Totally.
I do remember it got moved into like some place in Pioneer Square, and it got kind of sketchy.
Yeah.
And I wasn't down with. I was like, this isn't cool anymore.
Well, and I think they got some bad press in like the local like Seattle PI or whatever, and it was kind of the beginning of the end for that one. Right. But I think that was a little bit later, because I was going back.
The early ones were fun. They were fun, and that was. So you DJ'd at one of those?
No, my friend Danny Mashure, who I used to do some music. Danny, he DJ'd there, and that's when I went. And I think you were playing. You guys may have been playing the same night or something. I definitely saw you DJ there, because I remember seeing your wife as well. Anyway, just. It's a little fuzzy, to tell you the truth. I just remember that was a pretty wild concept. But at the time, not as wild as it would be today.
It's really funny. I invited my dad to go out for sushi because he went to one of those, or maybe he just knew about it or something. I think he just knew about it, right? He was like, "That's such a wild concept," right? And this was obviously a very long time ago.
Sure.
But he just made this like mental slip when I was inviting him out to sushi, and he was like, "So what time is the naked sushi?" I was like, "What are you talking about, naked sushi? Like, we're just going out for dinner, dude."
I mean, that was, you were here. I mean, you've been doing this for so long. That was 2000, I want to say 2003-ish, 2002-ish when I look back on it. And there was a lot of venues open, a lot of clubs happening, a lot of after hours going on. Raves were going strong. Like it was a pretty wild.
Pioneer Square was very lively at the time. You know, it was like there was a lot. It was a kind of a bustling, nightlife happening down there. We live in Pioneer Square now, and it's kind of quiet.
Is it?
Yeah.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
I always thought it would be a cool place to live, as long as you can kind of get away from the street level, because I do like the vibe has changed. It kind of
We live on the second floor of the street level.
Okay.
In an art loft building.
I love it.
Yeah, and it's nice. I mean, we've been there for a really long time. And
do you have a studio? I'm assuming you have a studio set up in that building, or do you have a studio elsewhere?
I do have a studio in our place. It's like our place is really big, so like the kitchen area is big enough to have a studio in it.
Okay.
And my wife does interior design, and her business really kind of picked up at a particular time, and she ended up having to buy a bunch of office desks and set up our living room to be an office. It's a really big apartment, right?
Yeah.
So now my studio's in the kitchen of our apartment, but I do have a studio in Pike Place Market.
Okay.
Because it's not my studio, but it's where I work for the Can. And a lot of the stuff that of my own stuff is set up inside that studio, and I've set it up for them, and I call it mine because I'm there every day.
Yeah, you should call it yours.
Yeah, it's my studio.
I'm going to tell you one other funny, more recent memory I had of you. And your wife's probably gonna kill me for this. Somehow I was on Facebook, and there was a video of your wife trying to get on a Zoom call, but during COVID, like the echoing with the Zoom calls and I just remember her like yelling at you, and you're doing like this whole Rasta thing.
Oh yeah,
you know what I'm talking about? Yeah,
during the pandemic, we were doing like our Monday meetings. During the pandemic, I couldn't do any music, and so but I am pretty admin like savvy, right? Like I've worked in offices for like ages, and so I was able to help her run her business system, and I was on the Monday meeting calls with her, but like my laptop and her laptop are like right next to each other, and like both speakers are on, and like we'd hear the echo, and I'd be like, Rasta man. So rewind.
I watched it like 3 times. Yeah. Honestly, yeah.
And she was just like, "Stop it, Dave."
Yeah. That was so much. It was just a little glance into the relationship dynamic. Because your wife's lovely, right? Like,
yeah, she is.
She seems very
cool. She's the best. She's the best.
Absolutely.
Absolute best.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, so back to you went to Redmond High School. You're not from here originally, though, right?
No, I moved up to Seattle from LA. I mean, I was, like 12 years old.
Got it.
Yeah, and so I was. We lived in the San Fernando Valley before that.
Gotcha. And I get the production thing, which led to the DJ thing. But was there also sort of an origin story as far as understanding dance music or the rave scene, or something that kind of tripped you into this world?
So, I mean, I didn't know anything about this, like dance music stuff, like any like Chicago scene or any of that until I came. And honestly, I didn't understand the history of dance music at all. Nobody told me about any of this until I moved to Seattle. And I was in 11th grade. No, I was in Seattle. So I was in Seattle from, 8th grade until pretty much like 10th grade, and then I moved down to Arizona to go live with my mother, and then I came back to Seattle in 11th grade, 1991-ish, and I met a whole bunch of people who told me about these raves, like that people were going out downtown and busting into warehouses and having like these one-night parties, and you wouldn't even know where it was until like the day of, right? And the whole thing was just like, what? That's so crazy. And a friend of mine that I went to school with, his girlfriend's his sister's boyfriend was a DJ that played pretty regularly at these things. And so I got like within a couple months of living here, I got to go out to one of these things, and I was just like, what the hell is this music? Where is it coming from? Like, why doesn't it ever stop? And like, what is this music? It's so crazy. And it just had me so hooked. I was like, this is so bonkers. And like, it was so unreachable, right? At the time, there was no internet and there was no radio stations. I had learned that there was the C89,
right.
But they had like one show at the time that played it for like on Wednesday nights, but like the rest of it was pretty unreachable, inaccessible music that you can only hear if you go to these things. And it's just like the entire concept like baffled me. Like, why would somebody make music that you can only hear if you go to these shows that you can't get to unless you're in the know, right? Like how is this whole thing even happening, right? And later I feel like as I learned, it made a lot more sense. But at the time, I was like, "What the hell?" And I was kind of like roped in. Like I was like, "This is cooler than." At the time, I was like really into industrial music and like Skinny Puppy and Nights of Reb and stuff. But this was like to me on a completely different level. Like, this music is just so hyper repetitive.
Yeah.
And you listen to it for long enough, it causes like. To me, it would just cause these like psychedelic patterns in my brain, you know?
Sure.
And like, it was different from all the other stuff,
And was Brit were you guys going out together and checking these things out, or were you?
Britt didn't go out to really any of them. I was going out with other friends that were like kind of involved, but I would bring the stories back to Britt.
Okay.
And I had a friend of mine had like this one record. I remember this one record. It was by later learned that it's like a Chris and Cozy side project called Prophets of Psyche, and it was like, you know, that total like Rotterdam banging. Yep. You know, I mean, I guess today it would be something like goth gabber music, you know, just banging. But it was the coolest thing in the world to me at the time. And Britt played it, and like we would just listen to it, like, what the hell is going on this music? And then of course, you know, we were trying to replicate that when I was working at Taco Time.
That's so cool. That's well, I can imagine in that sound coming from, you know, being into industrial and then I can see how that fed in. And then you guys made a bit of a shift with just the sound of Jacob London, right? Like, I mean, I don't know, how would you describe that transition, or is it too hard and too long of a journey?
I think it's just a slow evolution. I mean, Britt and I we've always been really, like, Britt's got like this really amazing sense of humor, and like we get the both, and so do I think I do too. And you get us together, and like we're just cracking up all the time, and like I think that really kind of showed through our music. And we would just come up with these crazy, silly ideas, and we would sample like movies, and you know, it was like we would try to take these ideas from like Chicago house and techno, but then fold in, you know, just silliness. But then at a certain point we started like evolving into just like, well, let's just do something cool and not have to try to fold silly into everything, right? You know, nowadays we're, you know, Britt and I still make music together, and we're just trying to come up with crazy ideas.
Yeah.
You know,
I think one of my favorite, and I'm not sure if I got the title right. It was either No Farting in the Snow Cave or Who Farted in the Snow Cave?
No, it's no farting in the ice fort.
Oh, in the ice fort. Yeah. That's what it is.
In the ice fort. Yeah.
I always love that, though.
Oh yeah. All of our, so we just thought it would be so funny because, like, you know, at the time, you know, really big DJs were charting songs, right? And the songs all had these very serious names, and you know, at the time, it was also very serious. Like John Digweed and, you know, Sasha, and like, you know, all these DJs are playing very serious music at their big epic things, and you know, and we're doing something different. And like, you look at these charts and stuff, and like, we thought it would be so funny if like somebody charted one of these tunes. Like, you'd look at the list, and like, then there's like No Farting in the Ice Fort, or like Shake Your Pancreas, you know, or like one of like the bull cow's gonna smack you in the butt. That was one of our songs. I mean, we had like just bonkers like song titles, and we thought that was, and it paired up really nicely with how weird the music was too.
Yeah, because there was kind of a quirkiness about
it. Was very squeaky, very quirky, but still like had that Chicago house shuffle
for sure.
And you know, which was really working at the time. And like, you know, like in I think 2001, that's when we signed our first record with Classic.
Yep.
And like that sound, that weird thing that we were doing, like became known. It was like, we were known for this now, you know, and these weird song names and everything. And we just kind of carried it through like into the, you know, mid 2000s, you know, we did a whole bunch of releases just running on that.
We're going to look at my Classic collection, because I know I have a couple of yours in there, and I think I might have one off. I'm trying to think off Free Range or something.
Yeah, we did
London too.
For Classic. We did a remix of Justin Martin and Sammy Deep, and then we had two of our own singles, and I feel we did the Tim Fuller and the DJ Ollie and Tim Fuller remix for them. Yeah, we were doing a bunch of stuff for them at the time. We got to go to London and play at the Classic party at the end, which was awesome. Like we like played before Derek Carter,
who's like one of my all-time favorite guys to watch, right?
Well, Matthew Herbert is DJing in the other room. like, what the hell, man?
Yeah. When you guys were performing as Jacob London, were you, I don't remember, but did you guys have like sort of a protocol where you're going back to back, or one song, two song, or
it was like,
how do you guys do it?
It was like 3 songs.
Okay.
And then it was always started by, and still carries through to today. Whenever we play together, the first person is the one that wins rock, paper, scissors.
I love that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just how it is.
And then that person plays the first track.
And
then sets
and then we just do
stage.
3s, and yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were doing 4 decks for a little while, but it was just, I mean, it just sounded like kind of cluttery. I don't know. I feel like it was just too busy. Yeah.
You can get busy.
Yeah.
It's fun. I think or you got to be really intentional about getting like minimal, but then you're like, well,
it's just like, why not just DJ?
that's exactly
Right.
That's exactly where I was going. No, that's super cool. And then you went out on your own. And I'm just super curious, because I think the dream for a lot of aspiring DJs and producers is the opportunity to tour other countries and to get paid to travel around and play not only DJ gigs, but one step up, playing your own music at DJ gigs.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, talk a little bit about that. I'd love to hear what that sounded like.
So like when, so in 2006, I quit my day job because
Which was what, by Taco Time still?
No,
I'm teasing.
no, I was working as front desk admin at a company called Peak Systems,
Okay.
which was located in the basement, third basement floor of the Quest Tower, which is now, I don't know what it is. It's Nordstrom, I think, downtown. Right. And leading up to that, I had already gotten a few advertising gigs. Like I did a few T-Mobile commercials, and I did, some and they brought me a lot of money. I mean, what I thought was a lot of money for a project, Right. And then I was like, well, at a certain point, like there was one, I did a game for Screen Life, and it was like the American Idol board game. And I was able to go on leave from work for a month to like produce this game, and they were totally cool with it. And I mean, but like the money from this game was like so good that I was like, what am I doing with this job? It was like, that was the turning point. Cause like, well, the money I'm making from my music is like on par with what I'm making with my day job. Like, why I could probably leave this day job. Right.
Yep.
And so Christina talked me into it.
Oh, she did?
She did. Yeah. She was like, you need to do this.
One
yeah.
more point on her pros list. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
That's right. She totally talked me into it. And I was like, really, like, I hated my job. I was unhappy with like my boss and everything. I was just not into it. And yeah, she was like, fuck that. Like you can do this. And so I did. I took the leap, and it was really like, yeah, it was pretty hard. But as part of the many things that I had to do to like try to make ends meet, right, I was getting ad gigs here and there, Nordstrom and various things.
Did you have representation, or were you going out on your own?
I was on my own. Yeah. Just like reaching out to people, everyone that I knew.
You were hustling.
I was hustling. Yeah. And it was also, there was there was a period where like everybody was like losing their job kind of around 2008.
Yeah, where the bubble burst a little bit with real estate.
That's right. And that actually like also spilled over into music supervisor territory. So those people who were hiring me for those like ad gigs were losing their jobs, and like no work was coming in. And I was like, fuck, what am I going to do? And so I and I was very, very timid about releasing music that wasn't Jacob London. I hadn't done it before. And I felt like in a way, like, I don't know, it didn't feel right. Like maybe in like a betrayal kind of thing. Like Britt and I had this pact, right? We were supposed to do this together, but I had to. And so I made some of my own music and sent it off to Free Range, who I had been like sending them Jacob London stuff for years, and they were like, no, not really for us. And I sent them a release, and they were like, you know what? I think we're going to do this. And yeah, that was kind of the start of the Pezzner. That's why.
Got it.
Yeah, that's when it all kind of began. Became out of desperation.
Yeah.
I was really desperate. I was like, shit, like, and I started just like making a bunch of my own stuff because nothing was coming in, and they were just loving all the stuff that I was doing. And
you like found a stride doing the solo stuff, and the whole reason for quitting your job was to do more of the ad work, but that dried up, right?
It really dried up, like,
Yeah.
big time.
Wow.
And then so I was like, well, this is kind of working, like I was getting, I mean, back then you got an advance, and
Wow.
there was royalties coming in.
Yeah.
And then after, I don't know, like I would say like after the second release on Free Range, then Ohm started knocking on my door, and I started like doing a little bit of stuff for Ohm, and then Free Range and Ohm, both of them, like, just, Ohm signed me up for like this whole big deal of doing like, 5 originals and 5 remixes for them. And then Free Range gave me a full album deal, and it just kind of it started snowballing. And then I got an agent.
Okay, that was going to be my next question.
Yeah, then I got an agent, and she was like, she used to be like DJ Sneak's agent.
Okay.
She's a very good agent. She's currently Derek Carter's agent.
So did the agent reach out to you? And
no, I reached out to her. I've been like, I've been sending her flowers. I've been like, just please.
you're
pick me
greasing
up,
the skids.
And at one point it worked out, and she was like, I think this, like, I got all this stuff coming out on Ohm. I got all these things coming out. I've done a whole bunch of remixes that are about to hit. Like, let's do this. And it just, like, she had me constantly touring, like, constantly.
Wow.
My status with United got bumped up into, like, I had status on the airplanes. You know what I mean? Like, I was like it was, yeah. And she was looking out. Like, she's fantastic. She's a fantastic human.
Wow.
Currently a fantastic human.
She's still your agent in some capacity? Okay.
No. I ended up moving on.
Yeah,
it was like after a couple years, there was another agent, because I really wanted to tour in Europe, and she does North America pretty much exclusively. And I had an opportunity to work with a European agent, but a European agent dude said that if I wanted to work with him, it had to be exclusive worldwide. And so that means if I'm going to play in Portland, they have to book through this guy in the UK.
Okay.
And so I just kind of leap of faith did it, and he had me touring all over Europe, and it was awesome. But also learning, it was like pretty stressful at the same time.
Yeah. And were you by yourself when you were touring? Because you were married, right, at the time? And
yeah, no, married, and I was just touring by myself.
Yeah.
And trying my best to support at home. We had a son.
Yeah.
We have a son, and Christina was just kind of like, on her own, and she was going through a lot with me being gone. And so it just added to the stress, and like, here I am touring all over Europe, and it on paper looks like a vacation
for sure,
but I'm like pinching pennies because I need to like bring that money home. And in some cases, like, wiring it back home as quickly as possible so that we can cover things. Like, it was just very, very tense, even though, like, I remember like coming back to London from Ibiza and then running over to the store so that I can like wire money home. It's wired all home, and then just like kick it inside the house and not do anything because I didn't have any money.
Right.
And
I imagine a bit lonely too, right? I know they try to take care of DJs that come into town, go to dinners and whatever, but like, was there some element of loneliness too, just doing this?
Yeah. I mean, yes, a little bit, but I was also really like focused on, at that time I was only doing live sets. I did not DJ for the first several years of doing Pezzner.
Thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah.
I was wondering about that. So you were doing live performance. Okay.
Yeah, it was all live sets. And so I would, you know, and I was obsessed about getting it right, you know,
Yeah.
just doing it just so I would go back, you know, anytime I had extra time, I would be back at the hotel, either making a new track or updating something for the live set, just constantly like working on it. You know what I mean?
What did that live set look like? Like, what was the actual setup?
It was pretty simple. I had 2 Behringer BCF 2000 controllers, and then at first that's all it was.
Okay.
2 like mixer looking things.
Yep.
And then my laptop, and then I got a launch pad that kind of helped a little bit, and then I got a you know, what is it, the Native Instruments machine.
Yeah.
And the machine was a nice addition to all of it, because I was kind of able to create stuff on stage, whereas prior to that I was like, you know, just kind of dabbling in loops and
launching,
you know,
different. Yeah.
And if Sunshine Jones were here, we'd be like, that's not live. No.
Totally right.
Yeah, I mean, like, nobody gave a shit back then, but I
Yeah.
think at this point, like, you couldn't fly doing just that.
Oh,
know?
you think?
I don't think it would be fair. I don't know. Maybe it's fine. But like back then, when live was relatively new, doing laptop sets and stuff, like, you know, just
there was a
laptop
novelty
and some controllers.
Well, I mean, you hear the debates today, like DJing, you know, with sync and with quantize and with all these tips and tricks we have. Like, there's these. I can't even deal with it.
It's
like,
a stupid argument, to
Totally.
be honest. Like, do you know Devlin?
I know.
He made this really great post, was talking about sync buttons, and I was like, well, you know, you're already cheating if there's a BPM readout.
Right. You just.
That's just, you look at the 2 machines, make them the same BPM. They're synced, done, right? Like, so the button doesn't matter.
No. The button will save you a second and a half, maybe. You know, if you
know the trick, right? If you don't want to be caught using
just
sync,
bing bing, right?
Okay, yes. That's the trick.
Totally right.
Beep beep. Like,
Yep.
you could do it so fast no one would ever know.
It's exactly. I know you can act like you're getting your drink and just hit it, and then come back and it's
totally.
I'm with
So
it.
like, why stop complaining?
They don't. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, it's whatever. We could talk for like 2 hours on this whole thing, because it's good and it's bad. I think it's on the upside. It's given this opportunity of accessibility and really hyper accelerated the ability to go from buying a piece of gear or some music to playing in front of a crowd and sounding decent.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also there's a dark side to that, because then you get a lot of noise in the business, and you know that's one thing we were talking about before we got on the mic. Just like there's enough sort of the things that I think, and I'll put this in the form of a question.
Okay.
Do you find that when people book Pezzner, are they looking for something different today than maybe they were looking for in the past? You know, from a DJ performance from you.
I don't know, to be honest. I think that because my body of work is really diverse now.
Yeah.
I think that back then, I mean, when I first started doing the Pezzner thing, I think my whole shtick was like, well, all you guys are doing minimal techno, and minimal is really popular.
Right.
And I'm over here taking house beats, but doing this really hypnotic house.
Yep.
Right. And my sound has, you know, totally evolved to just do whatever I want.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it is that, sometimes it's still that, and sometimes it's very much like acid house or techno, or sometimes, you know, it's like I don't care anymore. And and my sets show my like how diverse of music I'm really into. And so like maybe if somebody saw me play somewhere and it went really well, maybe they're just vibing on it and they want to have me come back, or
Right.
or what have you. But yeah, I don't know.
No, and I think that was a very ambiguous question.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes where I think sort of worst case scenario that I hear and see a lot when I'm following folks on social media is this person gets booked because they have this social following, they look a certain way, they know a certain person. You know? And that to me does seem like, I mean, that's probably always been in existence, but more now than ever.
For sure. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think we were talking a little bit before. I was like, there's definitely there's a bit of ageism, and I think as there always has been in this industry. In any part of any entertainment business, people just get excited about the kids who are cracking it out, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, look at them, they're so cute, or wow, they're so young. How are they even doing music? And then you get someone like. It's hard for someone who would say be in like their late 40s or in their 50s, just immediately just coming out with stuff, even though like it's totally possible for someone to do it given their length of knowledge and, and all that, but it's just not.
Yeah.
You don't see it as often, right?
You don't see it as often. You see it with like the old school that there's such a deep, heavy legacy with some of these like old school DJs and producers, but you don't necessarily see like the new 50-year-old dude coming hot on the scene. Right?
Wouldn't that be so cool?
I think it'd be fucking
like,
awesome.
If it like at some point just switched and it was like, how cool! He's so old. How's he even doing this?
Totally. It just comes in hot over the tree line and just pushes the kids out of the way.
What is that guy, like 90?
He's wearing the white New Balance from Costco. He's just fucking killing it with his fanny pack and his pacemaker.
Just out of nowhere. Like, what the hell, this guy?
Maybe it will. I don't know. That'd be an amazing. That'd be amazing transformation. Unfortunately, I'm not optimistic, Dave. Unfortunately, Well, so I think I got a pretty good feel for where you came from. I mean, there's so much to talk about because you have like 30 years of making music. It's totally. We'd have to do a series of like 5 to even, I feel like, scratch the surface. But I know in like 2015, then you started a new thing, which was Hunt and Gather, right? Yeah. What was the inspiration and the thought behind that?
Well, I had a label account actually with John Lemon. He was running the label for Beatport for a long time,
right?
And he a couple years before that, I set up an account with Beatport to like release some of my, because I was releasing a lot of music at the time, and I wanted to like also have my own label to do other things, right? Whatever I can't put out, or maybe I'll put it on my own label or whatever. I set up the account, and I think that the intention at the time was also to like be all of the artists. Like I would be all of the artists on the label under various names. I would create this sort of like, where did Dave find all these artists that sound like Pezzner?
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And kind of create this culture of music that sounds like the music I make. That was like my vision,
Right.
It never happened. I just didn't do anything with it. And then around 2015, my buddy Mark Lippert, who lives just blocks away from you here, he moves into town with his wife, Amy, and we totally hit it off, and we're talking about like doing parties together and stuff. And one night I'm at Monkey Loft, and I'm like asking the owner there, like I was like, how much money do like these promoters like gross at the door? Like how much is coming in? He gives me this number. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What? And and they're paying these DJs how much? And I was like, oh my God. I got all in my high horse about it. I was like, this is not, why? I can't believe it. He's like, well, do you want to do a party here? I was like, sure.
For that kind of money, yeah.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
So he gives me like a 12-hour party, because back then all summer long it was the 12-hour parties.
Okay.
And I talked to Mark about it, and like we're like, yeah, let's do this. Let's like make this thing together. And then it hit me that it was like, well, I have this label account and I haven't done anything with it, and maybe what I can do is make this a label launch. There's a good hook, right?
Yeah.
And so I put together music. I got it mastered. Mark's friend helped us come up with a a logo.
Yep.
Which
is great, by the way. The logo's cool. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, this is the old logo.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, we actually changed it at one point. And the problem was that the logo couldn't be scaled down, and so I had to figure. Anyway, we put together this 12-hour party, booked all some of my favorite local DJ friends, and for me it was like, okay, we're going to do this. It's going to be the most awesome party. And everything from the door is just going to go to all the DJs. And so, and it was 12 hours worth of, and we did that. I paid everybody as much as I could, off of the whole thing. It was everybody, that was just what I wanted to do. I just wanted to make, just show everybody that this could happen. You don't have to play for $75 or whatever, whatever people were paying people back then.
It's the same that they're paying people now. It seems like it's just
it's like we can all do better if we just say what what we want. And so, but more so at the end of the day, I had this label. And I had to start putting music out to make it a thing. Resident Advisor wrote about it. There was a thing, right? And then I for a while I was just doing the thing where I just make these pseudonyms and release under these various names. And it was fun because I had my buddy Matt Corwin, who is a fantastic writer, write up the one sheets, and he would create the story behind each of these monikers, and they were always really bonkers, and they were totally hilarious.
Yeah.
And I would send the stuff off to the PR. I had a PR company that I worked with, and they, I think that the PR helped get these songs noticed by radio stations in London and what have you. We had Nimone, who does a show on Radio 6 over in London, literally read the entire press sheet from beginning to end.
Wow.
Because it was so what is the story?
I've read some stuff that Matt used to write. He's a fantastic writer.
He's a great writer. Yeah. So he does most of our one sheets even now. He writes the native language ones. And he's fantastic. He's got this whole crazy story about the native language, which I don't think I have time to really delve into, but it's
you're going to come back, so we'll dig into that some more. No, that's very cool. So hunt and gather. Yeah. I guess I get the concept, and you guys are still active, or
we're still active. Yeah.
Is there a team? Or is
the team now is, after a couple years of doing that, I brought in Carlos Mendoza and Michael Manahan.
Yep.
And at the time I was, I was doing some nights at the Rebar and, trying out some things. And then these guys were helping me out with the stuff, and we just sort of decided I wanted to partner up and team up, and it's been very instrumental. Carlos has really helped pull this label into a thing that has a system and a process that I did not have before. It was cool. Very willy-nilly before Carlos came in, and now I really do feel like we have also Randy Deshays as a new member of our team, and he's actually from Boston.
Okay.
And he's thrown tons of parties back in Boston for ages, kind of like Brian Lyons has been doing the stuff here. He was doing stuff over there, and now he's here in Seattle and he's with us. And it's great to have him on board with us too.
Funny side note: I went to high school with Carlos for 1 or 2 years at
Lake
Washington. Yeah.
Crazy.
We go back to high school.
No way. Have you had him on the show?
No.
You should have him on the show.
I would love to have him on the show.
Great conversation.
You hear that, Carlos? Yeah. Yeah, I actually reached out to him before this thing was even a thing, because I always get ahead of myself, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to do this thing, and I would love to have you on the show. And I think he was very nice, but I think his sort of thought around it was like, I'll wait to see what this thing is before I commit to doing this thing.
Yeah. It's good. It's good to have someone cautious on.
Yeah, no, he's a smart guy. He's totally. Yes. So, good guy though. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
We go way back. So Hunt and Gather still active, and then you, and I don't. Did you? Now you actually work for the Can, which is something entirely.
Yeah,
it feels a little left field, but may not be as left field.
It's
as
pretty,
I think.
Yeah, it's pretty left field for. I mean, for my path, right? Like,
yeah.
In around 2015, around the same time I started the label, I did a, I was doing all kinds of things. I mean, when you do music, you just have to do whatever comes your way.
Right.
Like, you can't just be a DJ. Like, I do the DJ thing. I run the label. I was doing weddings with Jason Tokita.
Okay.
And that was like my bread and butter for a little bit. It was like, because it was just, I couldn't keep it was too volatile with the DJ thing.
Yep.
And then my neighbor, who his name is Eric Paget, he's a fantastic trumpet player. I live in a building of artists. And
okay.
My neighbor told me that he's in this band for this artist called Vince Mira. He's a country western artist who does sort of eclectic left field country. I don't know. It's hard to describe what I came into when I heard Vince's music, but it's badass. It's like really, really good. And but the guy who was managing they all needed someone to help them make a backing track that they can jump through and be a lot more dynamic than just a backing track. They wanted to be able to sync it up to MIDI for drum machines and all that stuff. And so I created an entire system for them to do it in live. Told them the equipment to buy, set up the equipment for them. I went to all their rehearsals, and that was just like a couple months of just showing up, and they paid me hourly to just be there to do this for them, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's awesome. And the guy who was the manager, he also owned the Fred Wildlife Refuge, so I was down at the Fred Wildlife Refuge.
And you guys have done parties there, right?
Yeah. Well, this sort of leads to that, right?
Oh, got it.
When we're finally done with that, they're up and running, and the guy who's their manager, his name is Chris Pink. He's like, I also own the Can, and we have all this need for all this like music stuff, and I really like working with you. Would you be interested in helping us, like, just edit some tunes for some of our shows? Like, this is like Elvis Presley and Beach Boys tunes, for our next show. I'm like, yeah, sure. And so and they had a little studio there at the Fred, so I was coming in there and just contracting with them, just making some edits and stuff for that show. And then the show went really well, and he's like, you know what, like, would you be interested in doing another one? This next one I want to do more original music. And so we did this like Romeo and Juliet thing, and I like wrote all these original tunes, and he had me in there like 8 hours a day for a couple months, just constant work. And I was like, shit, this is great. Like, I don't have to tour, I don't have to hustle. I could just come into work and like do this contract.
You're still doing music too.
Yeah, I'm doing, and like they're into like banging music, so I'm using all my like house music muscles to like make these crazy jams for them, right? And then we moved on to the next show, and the next show, and the next show, and like, by the time pandemic rolled around, I had done like, I don't know, like 6 to 8 shows for them, and I was constantly working for them, except for like in the middle times there was like, holiday show, they had it all packed up. So like, when things slowed down, I was just hourly, but they let me use their studio, so I would just keep coming back and working in the studio and whatever they need, right? But then pandemic hit, no work. But during that time,
no work because they weren't doing any live shows, and
they weren't doing anything, and all my DJ gigs were gone, and so and then but in that time they were relocating to a new space, which they got for pandemic prices, and they totally set up the new can in the new space. And then when everything reopened, they hired me on the books. And so now I work with them full time. I got a studio. I'm on it's like salary proper job, benefits, everything that you would need from a job. And then also like when things are like super duper slow or there's nothing really happening, you know, I still have my time to like make house music and do my other DJ stuff once in a while. But DJ stuff is not my main focus right now. Like my main focus is the stuff I'm doing with the Can. We've really leveled it up, right? Like
sure.
I'm doing I'm composing some like orchestral stuff for them now, and we're using like these like film scoring like sound library tools that sound like actual orchestras, and I'm learning more about music theory and pianos, and I'm hearing the music in my brain more too. I'm like hearing these like classical waltzes and stuff, and I'm starting to like make them, you know. And
I'm just like blown away by how this is all sort of transpiring from, you know.
Yeah. I'm like we've like, and it's like, you know, they're like, we have this Cole Porter song and we'd like to have an instrumental version of, but if there's, of course, like there's no, you know, good instrumental version of Les Girls.
So you have to reverse engineer
and so I have to like reverse engineer Cole Porter stuff.
Wow.
And in the process, I'm like learning about big band and like how to like combine VSTs to like create horns that convincingly sound like big band stuff, and also maybe like use a little sample here and there to like back it up and stuff. And like, but at the end of the day, like, you know, it's like I'm making, you know, Broadway show tunes sounding stuff with like big 808 kicks and, you know, synth sounds on top of it. And yeah.
And that's what I said. Maybe it wasn't as left field as it seems. And yes, it seems left field, but it also seems everything you've done up to that point has led to this point. That's a fucking great fit for you.
100%. Like, you know, I need to know how to make music that sounds like techno music because it needs to rattle those subwoofers in there. I need to know how to like bootleg tunes, right? Which I've done a ton of.
Yep.
And so I'm taking the original version of these tunes and I'm syncing it up with like my VSTs and making these crazy beats to go with them. But also I need to be able to like write in my own instrumentation to turn this like thing into something that feels original. And then of course I'm like, you know, working with the choreography and the music director to like edit it down just so, you know, and that's something that came from like all the ad stuff that I've done in the past. You know, it's like it just works perfectly for the can, you know. Yeah.
Do you feel like I guess the big question I'd have for you, if you look at this history that we kind of went through that leads you up to today with the job that you have now and the way you're expressing your creativity now, would you have done something different if you would have known? Like, I can't imagine you would map this out and thought, I'm going to land it making show tunes for cabaret.
God, if I knew that, I would have stayed like focusing on my piano and like I would have like traded with some of my art classes for band.
Got it.
You know, I probably would have done something like that. Like I do feel like my biggest hurdle right now is like knowing my scales on the piano, right? And understanding how they work together, because I am going by ear on everything, and I can hear chords in my head and hear how they're supposed to flow, and I can draw them out, and I know how to make them happen. But it's a very long, drawn out, grueling process. Whereas if I was a music theory major,
sure,
I'd be like, do. But you know, I also see a lot of music theory major people struggle through creating something that's really avant-garde and left field because their brain is so wrapped around what music theory says music is supposed to sound like.
Yep.
So, and you know, I'm all backwards approach. I'm all reverse engineer. You know what I mean?
Cool.
So
it's so cool. So would you? To me, it sounds like the Pezzner, you know, the way you've traversed what is now, you know, from the past to the current. And I'd love to understand, like, future wise, now that you know what you know and you're doing what you're doing, and just a side note, I could imagine maybe like with some house music producers or DJs or electronic music producers, there might be some ego sort of getting in the way of like, no, I'm not going to do show tunes. That's not what my thing is, right? But I don't sense any of that with you.
No.
It seems like you love it, actually.
I love it. I love it.
So crazy.
I think the hardest thing was, for me when the job was offered, was the knowing, because I know how this industry works, and if you stop hustling for 3-4 months, you're done. You're done, and it's going to be a long road of like trying to convince the industry why you're coming back.
There's a short memory.
Yeah, it's very short, and you're like, well, that's cool. Pezzner's coming back. He was cool for a while. That's how I see it, and it's probably that might not be the case. I have a weird ego about it, but that's it. You do wash up fast, and that's what I experienced was, in the whole time that I was doing this whole DJ music for a living thing, was that like the money came from DJing, but the DJ gigs come from releasing music, and the releasing music comes from the time you spend creating the music. So you can imagine there's like this long period from the time that you sit down to make a tune to the time that the tune comes out to the time that the promoters realize that, like get into it, and they're like, oh wow, there was a buzz about that. You have to like release multiple. It doesn't take one tune to make a buzz. You have to have multiple tunes piling up together to make a buzz. You have to have multiple things up in the charts, and that's where the buzz comes from. Right. And that creating that flow of your name constantly coming up in the charts, it takes a real long time to keep that in circulation. Right? Yeah. And who knows if it will ever happen for you. Sure. But that's your name in circulation constantly does lead to these DJ gigs that help pay the bills. Yeah. And I was like, I don't want to, like, cause my agent's going to drop me,
and it's a piece of your identity, and that's, I get it.
Yeah. But, well, for the can though, like, it didn't take me too long. I mean, they got me set up in this really dope, office in Pike Place Market, and I've got like, they are very sensitive to my other creative endeavors. That's so cool. And they're totally cool with me exploring them in the studio, and they want me to learn and grow as an artist because I bring that back to them. And
it sounds like I've never had
a more supportive like work situation, right?
And you're still crushing DJ sets. I mean, I've seen you like twice in 2 months. Brought my wife out; she loved it. Like,
people all of a sudden like this. There was a long period in the last like year and a half where it's just nothing came in, and I was like, I don't give a shit. I'm 100% happy just coming to work, making this stuff, and then going home. I'm getting creative. I'm creatively fulfilled. And
that was what I was going to ask.
And my family is like being supported, and like all that stuff. All of my needs are being met, right? So beautiful. How can I complain? Right. Yeah. So, yeah.
So I guess the last question I have for you, and then I want to cut you loose on the decks, because now I'm super curious on what you're going to do tonight, because you have a couple.
So am I.
I love it. Is there a future vision for you, like? Whether it's going down this route with the can production, DJing, like or are you living it, or are you kind of flying it as you're building it right now?
I think at the moment I'm kind of just flying it. I feel like I've when I was a kid I set out to achieve music for a living, right? That was like a huge hurdle for I think any musician, right? It's not an easy thing to achieve. I've achieved it. And I'm like, I've not only achieved it, I'm living a living where like I feel settled and comfortable, and I can pay my bills, and in worst case scenarios I can hold down the fort for my family,
for sure.
And that's what could anybody ever ask for? But for the future, I mean, I would love to be able to like work on a team that does bigger things later on down the road. I certainly would love to work on you know, a music composition team that's doing, you know, scores or,
Yep.
you know, work on more advertising things, you know, like have more of that stuff come in, because I really enjoy the sort of sound design music approach that comes with like doing, you know, promos and ads,
For sure.
you know.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Games. I've always wanted to do games. I know that's a tough industry to get into. I got my certification with Wise like back before the pandemic, because I thought that like I was going to try to move into composing for games, or maybe even doing music editing, or
Got it.
you know, implementation. Maybe implementers are on another plane, but you know, I wanted to create content for games, but that industry is swamped. Is it really hard? Yeah. And you also have to love playing video games, which I don't. I don't like playing video games. I just like the idea of interactive music.
Sure. Yeah.
But I had a lot of fun with Wise.
Like I said, I think with your amount of history and longevity and this like continued relevance, well, you're still what I learned tonight is, because you know, we've talked, we've ran into each other, but I've never really gotten to sit down and talk with you, which is why I love doing this, just for my own selfish like self-interest. But you just have this ability, this egoless zigzag, like, and it's not even about making the best of it. It's like finding the best, you know, like you've put yourself in a very cool position where you're, like you said, you're still you're meeting your creative needs, and you also, your needs are met, right?
My life needs, like all of them. I'm in a pretty sweet spot. Like I don't really want to mess that up.
No.
I don't want to fuck with it. Why shake the boat? Like I'm on it. This is a good boat. Like.
Right. No, that's great. Well, I really, like I said, we have hours of potential conversation, so I really do appreciate you coming in and spending time with us.
Yeah.
Super. You have a couple of super fans. I'm not going to tell you who they are in this room, but no, we all like, we've all come out specifically to watch you play. So
that's awesome.
No, but it's also like, with you, there's like a question sometimes, like what's he gonna deliver tonight? You even mentioned it, like you don't really know sometimes, you know. I don't. Sometimes I'll just put together like a pool of music that I'm just gonna kind of run through, or like try to, you know, piece together things, but you know, it just sort of kind of goes as a I honestly don't know. I love it. Well, let's get you behind the decks.
Yeah, let's play.
See what happens, man. Thank you so much for coming
thank you for having me. This is awesome. I really enjoyed it. Lovely place.
Thank you.
Everything. Yeah, it's good chatting.
All right. Yeah. Take care.
Cool. Awesome.
All right.